Let's get started here. Important to just kind of get a sense of what this is all about. Hopefully, you'll leave this session with a little bit more idea about what this whole thing is all about, and hopefully some comfort around that, and maybe some steps that you can take moving forward to get more familiar and study for this exam. The agenda, I just want to kind of, the whole purpose is to kind of familiarize you with the exam. I want to tell you just a little bit about where I'm coming from with this whole thing. Then what the exam is all about. I'll show you some different pieces of it, give you kind of an overview, and then start getting into some ideas about what kinds of things you might want to prepare, what kind of resources are out there, what kinds of advice, and we can spend some time answering questions and hopefully, or just asking them. Hopefully we can answer them, but please take some time to do that. My own background, just so if some of you I know, and I see some friendly faces out there, and it's very nice to see. Some of you I don't. I myself grew up speaking Spanish and English. I was born in Mexico City. I moved very young age to Los Angeles and grew up there. Did all of my schooling in Los Angeles. When after college, I moved back to Mexico City and to do a master's program in applied linguistics at UNAM, and from there continued on my journey in linguistics, and ended up doing a PhD after that. And all of that, all of my kind of background and reasons for going into studying linguistics are all sort of related to my teaching experiences that I had in college and after college. Kind of launched me into a very strong curiosity around languages and language learning and all of that. So I work in the College of Education. I teach Education 170, Introduction to Bilingual Education. I also am supervising candidates in the multiple subjects program as well. And I'm working with the Ed Equity Office, also advising students who potentially are thinking about going into teaching. So that's a little bit of my own background. So I'm going to start with just kind of an overview, what this test is, what there is on this test. In any case, the CSET Spanish III exam has 4 sections. The 4 sections are listening, reading, speaking, and writing. And we'll talk in detail about each of those. The listening and reading sections have some multiple choice question components, and then all of the sections have more of a constructed response question, which means either you are verbally recording something that you are saying in Spanish, or you are writing something a little bit longer, like an essay kind of thing. So again, there's multiple choice questions, listening and reading, and there's some constructed response questions. And the idea is that this exam is kind of assessing some sort of Spanish, abilities in some very restricted sense. So the whole test is about 2 hours and 15 minutes long, and we'll go into the details behind each of these sections in a little bit. But before we go there, I just want to say what the test is not, because I think this is sort of an important point that we want to make sure it doesn't cloud how we think about the exam, and doesn't cloud our performance in the exam also. And that is, there are a lot of dynamics around this exam. It's established by the state of California for certain kinds of purposes. We can talk about what those purposes are on the next slide. But the main thing I tell my students is, do not let this exam tell you if you are or are not a Spanish speaker. I think that is just, we don't want to let these sort of institutional barriers kind of cloud the way we think about, our own, and also, not validate some of the things that we think that we should be validating. So on both ends, don't let it tell you are not a Spanish speaker. Don't let it tell you you are a Spanish speaker. I think if you are here and if you are considering this test and you are ready to take this exam, I am absolutely confident that we are all Spanish speakers in the way that this exam, it can't really assess, right? It can't really tell us all of the things that we know. It's simply trying to sort of assess a very restricted range of abilities. And we can talk about what exactly those abilities are in a little bit, or we can talk about all the things that it doesn't assess also later on if you're interested as well. I'm super interested in those things too. So that's kind of what the test is not. This is kind of what the test is, right? So it is required for a bilingual authorization certificate. This is something that is added on to your credential when you finish your credential program, and it allows you to do different kinds of things within schools. It can be extremely useful. It can make you very competitive for different kinds of positions, not only in bilingual programs, but also in any kind of setting where there are bilingual students, which in California especially is really all over the place. So it's for professional development, for job opportunities, it can make sense. It's used by the CTC, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, to provide a kind of standardized measure. Again, it's just of some kind of linguistic abilities in reading, listening, writing, and speaking in Spanish. And all of this information can be found elsewhere. I'm not sort of the center of this sort of thing. It's all on the CTC website. I'll point you to some of those resources towards the end of the workshop, and you can find all kinds of information there as well. So I'm gonna, that's kind of the overview, the purpose, what it is, what it isn't. And I would like to now move into each of the sections just to give you a kind of a glimpse into what the different pieces of the exam are all about. And I'll start with the reading comprehension section, which has a multiple choice component. And you can see here on the screen, I've tried to put an example. This is again an example that a sample exam question that the CTC provides, where you have a sort of a short text, and then there's a question that you are being asked to answer. It's multiple choice, and you have to kind of use what you know about this very decontextualized piece of text here to try to answer this question. And so, one thing I will just say off the bat, one thing you want to do when if you are used to taking these kinds of exams, one thing is good to do in a reading comprehension is you want to probably read the exam question first and then begin to read the text so that you kind of know what you are looking for. And often, once you get to know these exams, you get to know sort of the kinds of things that they're looking for. In this case, the question is, this has to do with an email that was sent from an airline company, and your job. The question is, ¿para qué mandaron el mensaje? Why did they send this message to you? So you need to kind of unpack what the purpose is behind this email, and then choose from some of those limited options there, what you think the motive is behind it. So again, often in the reading comprehension, it will ask you questions about what do you think the motive of the author is? What is the purpose? What is the conclusion? Why is the author writing what they are writing? Those sorts of questions, which won't necessarily get spelled out in the reading comprehension, in the text itself, but it is something that you can infer from there. So they're testing some of your inference abilities as well, in this case. So just wanted to put kind of a reading comprehension. I think we're kind of familiar with this format, perhaps. perhaps some of you have taken an exam in Spanish before, an AP exam, maybe in Spanish, and you might be especially familiar with these things as well. It's not too different. I often get questions about, okay, well, what can I do? How can I prepare for this reading comprehension section? The obvious answer is, of course, read. Well, what do you read? Well, short stories are I think, super fun. Feel free to reach out to me for more specific ideas. Like if you have some kind of specific interest in something, I'll be glad to share anything or try to find out stuff. Newspapers are great. Graphic novels, cartoons. I really like the cartoon Mafalda, which is an old, well, not that old, 50, 60 years or so old cartoon, Argentinian cartoon, which I think is super funny. It's great for elementary ages. So those of you who work with elementary ages might kind of get a kick out of reading cartoons and getting familiar with those things. But also think more broadly around. You can read subtitles, and I'll write this later. But you can read subtitles, when you're watching a Spanish language movie, for example, and make sure you put the subtitles, and so that way you're reading, listening at the same time. And I think that can be really great. Audiobooks can be really great. Really, as much print and different kinds of Spanish language texts that you can familiarize yourself with, the better, of course. So moving on, the listening comprehension section is very similar. Part of it is very similar to the reading comprehension, except for rather than reading a text, you're listening to a text. And so it's the same sort of idea where you're going to get a chance to play a recording, and you'll get a chance to hear it two times. And then you will have either one or two questions that you will have to respond to. It's very helpful if you can read the questions beforehand, so that as you're listening, you can get a sense of what it is you're going to be asked to answer. And again, if you can see from this particular example, I'm not going to play this piece right now, but you can get a sense of the kinds of questions that they ask. And again, it's sort of, well, ¿cuáles las siguientes respuestas describe mejor la perspectiva del crítico? What kinds of responses best describe the point of view of one of the people talking? So again, it's asking you to sort of infer where is one of the speakers coming from, similar to the question we saw earlier in the reading comprehension. And so you have to make some inferences there based on what you're hearing. One of the pieces to this, the listening comprehension pieces, is that you might hear a variety of accents even within one recording that you might not necessarily be familiar with. So it's good to also familiarize yourself perhaps with different kinds of accents from different places. Get some experience, maybe listening to different ways of speaking, different rhythms, different speeds of speaking, so that you're not just all of a sudden in there thinking, wow, what's happening? We can talk about some of those resources also in a little bit. So that's one kind of listening comprehension question. There is one other kind of listening comprehension question, and this is called a constructed response, which means you are going to be asked to write, a little bit longer response to something that you hear. So you will hear, again, you hear an audio recording two times, and you are asked to respond to something that you hear in that recording. So in this case, it's asking you to identify different things that one of the speakers is saying. There's a man and there's a woman, and they're speaking about different things. And so you have to pay attention to what is the woman saying, what is the man saying, and you're going to try to summarize, the main point of what both of those speakers are saying. One thing that's interesting about this piece, as you can see here in the instructions, it says, escriba una respuesta en español o en inglés. This part is not assessing you're writing in Spanish, you can write this piece in Spanish, but you don't have to. You can also write it in English, whatever you're more comfortable with, whatever is sort of easier and maybe quicker, perhaps. You just have to make sure that you answer all of the pieces that they're asking you for, that you identify what you need to identify, that you summarize what you need to summarize. Moving on from there, I'm going to just go over a couple of tips I would share for the listening comprehension section around, I said this before, but audiobooks are wonderful. You can listen to them all the time. You can read while you're listening, which I think is really great. Again, you can turn on subtitles while you're watching Spanish language movies with different varieties, accents, etc. There is a really, really cool website called Radio Ambulante that has different radio news pieces and stories from around the world, all in Spanish. I find it fascinating. There's all kinds of really, really cool things that you can find on Radio Ambulante. And so I put that there as well. But of course, outside of that, there's thousands and thousands of things that you might find, and it's worth finding different things that you can listen to with different varieties of Spanish, different accents in Spanish, again, different sort of rhythms and speeds, just so you feel more comfortable come the exam time. Okay, so that's I've gone through sort of different things. I've done sort of an overview of the exam and talked a little bit about the reading section, the listening section. I'll move on now to another section, the speaking section. The speaking section is super weird is my most accurate way of saying it. I think just because the weird part about it is that you have to speak to a microphone and not to an actual person. And that can feel very strange. You also have a designated amount of time that you have to speak into the microphone, a maximum amount of time, which is 2 minutes. And so, it's very artificial in many ways, the speaking portion, because of those dynamics, and it can throw you off. So, my biggest recommendation for the speaking section is to practice. You need to practice. What does 2 minutes feel like? What does it feel like to speak for 2 minutes to a microphone in this weird situation? Because the idea is not that you have to fill up the entire 2 minutes, but you do have to, you don't want to speak for 15 seconds. So, anything around a minute and a half is probably fine. But you also don't want to, speak too long and go over the 2 minutes and get cut off. So you want to kind of have a good sense of what does 2 minutes feels like. And for that, you have to practice that piece and also practice talking to a microphone for 2 minutes. You also, before you get a chance to actually speak, to record yourself, you have 2 minutes to read a prompt. You take some notes on that prompt, and then you have 2 minutes to record. So it does go, a little bit quickly. The prompts are meant to be things that you can be familiar with, that don't take a lot of research or anything like that, but something that you can kind of get into and talk about in the best way that you can. So you definitely want to take some notes. Make sure you write down a couple of things that you absolutely make sure you want to say. And again, practice these things. I will give you some resources and some potential prompts later on in this in the workshop, so you can continue to look at them. But again, the hardest part is really the practice piece for this section. I think, in my experience, anyway. Yeah. So here's aside from those, I didn't put those kinds of tips on here, but in terms of preparing for speaking, if you don't get a chance to speak Spanish too much on a daily basis, some of the things that that I would say that you can do is, again, I'll go back to reading. I'm a big kind of proponent of how much reading can do for you in terms of any language. So reading, and in this case, reading out loud ends up being really fantastic. You're sort of reading out loud, read to the microphone. It can be very helpful. Again, talking on the phone, talking in person, joining, creating, having your own sort of Spanish club. All of those ideas are great as well. I'm gonna just the last part of the test that I want to mention before we move into more of a question answer kind of dynamic is the writing portion. There are two kinds of writing questions. One is a short written response, and another is called an extended written response. And those have different time frames, which is the reason for what their names. The short written response is about 20 minutes or so, and the extended written response, the recommendation is around 45 minutes. So I'll talk about each one of these. The short written response, I just have put in an example here. This generally takes the format of an argument in favor of or against some kind of statement, so that you have to show kind of an ability to argue in favor or against something, to persuade, right? It's I think in elementary it's discussed, and in middle schools as well, as a persuasive essay. So you're asked to provide a persuasive essay in Spanish for or against this position. In this case, it's this example is all publicly funded schools must provide breakfast for their students. What kinds of arguments can you find in favor of this? What kinds of arguments can you find against? And you want to take a position on one side or the other. In addition to, for example, if you are going to argue in favor, remember too that one thing that is good to do, that makes things a lot more persuasive, is to also say not just why you are in favor, but why you are not against it, right? Why some of the arguments against are not arguments that you find persuasive yourself, or that you find less persuasive in some sense. And so you want to also take that into account as you think about this sort of for or against kind of position. The second kind of question is an extended written response. Again, this is a little bit longer, and it requires, I think, maybe a little bit more information giving from your end, as opposed to arguing in favor or against something. This might ask you for some more background, something that you can use from your own background, cultural background, academic background, something that can help you answer a question and kind of develop an essay in some direction. And they're generally pretty open, so hopefully, part of this both of these pieces have a little bit to do with luck, in the sense that sometimes you'll get questions that you're familiar with and are somewhat easier for you, and sometimes you'll get questions that you just get kind of stuck on, and that's just the sort of flipping a coin of an exam, and sometimes you get luckier than others. But within that, I think we can talk about this, and feel free to reach out and ask different kinds of strategies that you can use to develop your answers in these kinds of essays. This is one example. Again, these are examples that you'll find in the CTC prep materials also, and I'll give you again a link to some of those resources a little bit later. Some tips for preparing for the writing section. Again, read. I would say read. Reading is probably one of the closest ways for you to do something interesting, and at the same time practice some things that you need to be able to do for when you write. Aside from actually writing, writing text, even texting to family, friends, and all of that sort of thing. Social media is really great for this sort of thing. Following Twitter, Spanish, to the extent that you're practicing Spanish and trying Spanish only Twitter feeds. You can find videos, you can read things from different parts of the world. which can be, at the same time, really fascinating. So anyway, those are some tips. We can talk again more about that kind of stuff as well, whenever. There's one question that I always get about the writing section, and that is the accent marks, right? So like, oh, what if I don't know how to write the los tildes en las palabras? ¿Qué pasa si no sé cómo marcar los acentos? Honestly, and I'm not, a person who evaluates the exam, but I have seen many students go through the exam and come out the other end successfully, and they're not necessarily, experts or 100% right on the accents all the time. I don't think any of us are. This is sort of a place where we can have some doubts sometimes and kind of think about these things. So, it's not that it's ignored in the exam. It is a piece, and we can talk more specifically about where that piece fits in, because it's related to some of the things that you are being assessed, which have to do with structure. So it's in the same category as something like grammar, verb conjugations. It's in the same category as some kind of syntactic constructions, but also in the same category as vocabulary. And so accent marks end up being sort of a little piece of what the exam is assessing. And in that sense, obviously, if you don't put ever any accents anywhere, that's probably going to be problematic. On the other hand, if you put accents in too many places, in places where they don't belong, that's also probably problematic. But if you're somewhere in between, you're fairly, accurate as many times as you can be, you're probably going to get by and you're probably going to be fine. So you do want to be, obviously familiar. You want to know and be familiar with the accent marks, but you do not have to, absolutely master them. That said, I do think the accent marks are a lot simpler than we are generally taught to believe. I feel like they live in our imagination as if they're some sort of what is it? Just some kind of imaginary difficult thing that we can't penetrate. But it's a lot simpler. There are some sort of two or three rules that you have to kind of get familiar with and be able to use. So, they're simpler than we're led to believe, I think. They're not as mysterious. And honestly, they are, often used as a kind of gatekeeping. And so we need to be aware of that as teachers, for sure. Don't let it be a gatekeeper to you or to your students, but do get to know them. I'd be happy to work on these with anybody who's interested. I think that, in a series of sort of 3 short meetings, we can really unpack, and by short, I'm saying like 15, 20 minutes. I think we can unpack all of the accent mystery and go from there. And it ends up being, I think, a lot easier than we're led to believe, to be honest. They're also, I think that said, I think they're also not as important as we're led to believe. Again, I think they're often used in a very sort of gatekeeper kind of way that we want to just be really aware of, and know for ourselves how those accent marks, can index different things that we do ourselves. Anyway, so a lot to say about accent marks more generally. For the particular exam, I would say you definitely want to get to know them. Definitely get some practice with them. It's good for your general knowledge in any case. And reach out if you have any questions. You don't have to feel like you're going at this all by yourself. I'm going to just kind of transition into some other sort of materials that you might find interesting, that you can kind of take notes. These are a set of resources that are going to be available to you on Canvas in a set of modules like the ones that you see here on the slide. So there's a module for reading, listening, writing, and speaking. There are also some additional resources for practicing. A lot of the information that I've given today is also represented in those modules. I will direct you in a little bit as a follow-up to please get to know those materials, and then again reach out to me, follow up with me with some of those practice exercises that you'll find there. So please use that page. You'll see different kinds of recommendations also for signing up for the exam. What do you do when you get to the exam? Those kinds of questions hopefully can be summarized in parts of that Canvas site as well. Moving on, I'm just going to conclude and then ask if there are any questions, and I'll be glad to answer and ask and respond to and discuss anything that you guys are interested in discussing. A couple of things I've tried to do here is just to familiarize yourself a little bit with what is the CSET Spanish III exam all about, hopefully taking away some of the mystery behind what this one is of all the exams that you might have on your plate. What is this one for, and what do I need to focus on? And hopefully I would like you to leave with some resources and feel like you have some support as you continue to study, or even as you begin to study, wherever you are on that exam. I think that the sooner you start tackling some of these things, the less weight might be on your shoulders. You might feel hopefully better about. But again, any questions that you have, reach out to me, reach out to the Ed Equity office, and we can try to help you with as many of these things as possible. You're not alone in trying to navigate this particular exam. Are there questions that you would like to ask? Feel free to either unmute or ask them in the chat. It is just no, you can't just take one section, but you can take it as many times as you need, right? I think there's a window there where you have to let a certain number of I think weeks or months pass before you can take it again, but you can take it as many times as you need. You do, however, have to take all of the sections every time: listening, speaking, reading, writing, and so you do have to pay each time, but you can take it as many times as you need. I do have one other slide, just as a kind of next steps. As you continue thinking about this particular exam, and as you think about where you want to get started on these things, I would like to kind of, not that you need more work to do, but I would like to leave you with some next steps, like concrete things that you can do if you would like to start moving on this exam. I know, for example, that the next testing window for the exam begins in December and January. So there's a sort of a testing window where the test site opens up again and you're able to take this exam. And again, that's December, January. After that, it will close for a month or so, and then it will open back up again in February. I think February, March is the next time when you might be able to take the exam. And it kind of goes from there. There's usually a month or two in between, and then it'll open back up again. And it is an in-person exam. You do have to go to an actual testing site, and you take the exam at a computer. You can find some of that information on the website and on the Canvas site. So in any case, the earliest at this point that you would be able to sign up would be sometime in December, January. There are different testing sites. There's a couple that are in Sacramento, and then there's some in the Bay Area and elsewhere that depending on where you are and what you can do, that might be more or less convenient for you. So as you're working, as you're moving into these things, one thing I would ask, and feel free, work on some of these questions that are on the Canvas site, work through some of those practice problems, and come to, reach out to me, reach out in the next couple of weeks. Tell me what your results were. How did you do with the reading section? Did you do well? Did you not do well? Do you have questions about the reading section? Do you have questions about the speaking section? Do you want to try a speaking exercise, with a couple other people? We can also do different kinds of meetings where there might be 2 or 3 or 4 of you who would like to meet, together in a group. We can kind of workshop some things that way as well. And in addition, accent marks, if anybody wants to, really excited to talk about accent marks or review those, some of those things, please reach out that way, and I'll be glad to again work on any of those things with you as well.